Welcome to the Grit Growth Podcast. Commit to conquer, lead your life, leave a legacy, gather your grit, and let's get after it.
What's up, boys?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thank you. How you doing?
Good, great. Thanks for joining us.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. I sound okay?
Yeah, you sound great. What about me?
No worries at all.
Okay, good. I'm mobile today, broadcasting out of the camper, so this was my first mobile setup. I've been struggling the last couple minutes, but
it looked like you were in a deer blind.
Yeah, I wish. Well, I wish my deer blind was this comfortable, and then
there's certainly deer blinds out there that are, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have any of those, but they exist. Yeah. So you were traveling. Where are you coming back from?
Went to ATA last week and then flew from ATA in Indianapolis to Midland, Texas for a West Texas SCI show. So now I leave for Vegas. Cool. Leave for Vegas tomorrow, and then Phoenix on the weekend. So. Oh
wow, all over.
Yes, sir.
No rest for the weary.
That's it. We got to roll.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So and all that's work, right? It's all hunt related all the time.
Yeah, just meeting people and connecting and figuring out new stories and new people to help us and support us, what we do every single day. So
right. That's great. That's awesome. Okay, well, since we're segued into it there, I'll go ahead and get into it. So I've been following along with you for quite a while. I have huge respect for what you do. I think it's fascinating and amazing and frankly misunderstood, unfortunately. And you know, my show here is all about grit, and it's personal, physical, professional, you know, grit in every facet of life. And I think that you showcase a ton of grit with what you do, and that's the side of your story that's maybe not being told, or maybe just kind of it's ancillary. But I want to focus on that. You know, not only the grit that you show and what you have to do and go through and deal with, and the things that you're overcoming on your journey, but also, you know, hunting in general. How did that translate to grit ancestrally, and how does it grow grit in young people today? You know, I think there's a lot to unpack there. But it's just, you know, conversation, and it'll go wherever it goes. But that's kind of some things I brainstormed a little bit. And so with that being said, you know, I'd like to, if you don't mind, just give us a little introduction to what you do every day beyond the little bit that I just hit on.
Yeah, it's well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on a podcast. I'm always humbled when someone wants to talk to us and find out what we do and how we do it. It's really it is a passion. It's a passion project that is now turned into something that's more full-time for what I do. We've been building and building and building, and now as with most endeavors, it takes a little bit of time to get to be able to do the thing that you want to do full-time, and I'm grateful to be able to do it now. And so every day we are really just we're trying to just change perceptions around who hunters are and what hunting does all around the world. And the hunting community, you know, has been sort of a product of its own cause. In the last 20 to 30 years, we really haven't thought about what a non-hunting audience thinks about us. And because of that, the anti-hunting establishment has taken that rhetoric and that narrative and has changed the element of who we are. And we've never shaped our own narrative, and we're trying to take it sort of by the scruff of its neck now and really shape our own narrative of who we are. And so that's what Blood Origins does day in and day out. We craft content that aims to show the non-hunting majority, the 70% of people that don't hunt, that maybe don't have an opinion about hunting, may have a negative perception about hunting, or may even have a positive perception around hunting, and give them a different lens to which they can view hunting through, a different lens that they can view a hunter through. And that's all our charge is to really just bring that message day in and day out And really, it's a 24/7, 365 job because we have a very global fingerprint to what we do. And if you think about it, at some time during the 24 hours sort of hourly clock that we live by, if you're asleep in America, Australia is awake, or Europe is awake, or Asia is awake. And there's something tied to hunting that's happening that we are tied in with somehow. So yeah, it's a little bit of intro of who I am.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's great. I think, there was a lot there already, but the passion project statement that you made, or the term that you used right there, I think that's a great place to start, because my framework, or my definition of grit basically is that, for anybody to ultimately fulfill their life's purpose, it has to start with passion. It has to start with something that you're passionate about. And as you push through, the trials, or the if your interest in a subject reaches a plateau, that's the point that makes or breaks your grit, right? So on your journey, say it sounds like it started out part-time and it's grown into your full-time employment, but you did something else along with it when you started it. Is that
correct?
A safe assumption?
Yeah. I essentially had two full-time jobs, one that was paying the bills and the other one that was Blood Origins, essentially.
Right. But the passion ultimately persevered, and now your purpose, this purpose that you work on every day, has turned into full-time employment, right?
Yeah.
So that's a critical piece, I think, and there was, I'm sure, lots of ups and downs there. And can you tell us a little bit about that, or maybe a point where you was there a point where you second guessed yourself? Maybe we're running low on motivation and steam, and had to really dig into discipline to keep it going.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it still happens today. Like you still go through doldrums today, and even more now that I'm, full time into this. Now that I've decided, like, now I'm full on, I think you get a little bit more anxiety and more scaredness, which maybe is a good thing. Waking up more scared than I used to. But no, every single day, it's a sort of, the way that the analogy we use is we stick our shoulder behind a stone and we move the stone forward every single day. And when we wake up in the morning, that stone seems to have gone back to the same place that we put our shoulder behind it the day before, but it's just maybe a couple of inches further up the hill, essentially. And yeah, when we first started, again, I was pouring the way that Blood Origins, and I think the way that it feels and the way that it operates, is that we are a brand that is, authentic to who we are as hunters, and we don't live in the model of belonging to someone. We don't get paid by someone to tell their story. We don't get paid by a company to belong to them. We don't belong to anyone. We belong to everyone. And as such, there's always politics in anything. And in the hunting industry, politics are especially vicious in terms of, belonging to a camo company or a gun company or a bullet company or whatnot. And we've essentially broken that mold a little bit. And also we've broken the mold of how we're represented. We're very respectful. We're very gentlemanly. We're very open to discussion, to hear both sides of the equation. And all of those things that I just described tends to upset people. And that puts us in places where sometimes you're just like, why am I even dealing with this nonsense? And that's just the hunters. So you can imagine what we get from the anti-hunters every day that we have to deal with. So, our job is to put our head above the parapet and to tell the truth about hunting and to tell the truth about hunters. And we do it. And we're completely good with doing that. And we're completely good taking bullets that get sent our way. And those bullets happen to come from every walk of life, including the hunting community that we are fighting for every single day. So no, motivation is, every day is the same thing. You wake up and you're gonna find that there are challenges, and you're gonna find that there are things that stymie your progress. And just like anything else in life, we just keep moving forward. And I think one of the characteristics that I probably most imbue is that I'm probably the most patiently persistent individual that you will meet. And that's just part of life, that you just have to, like, if you want something, you just doggedly just keep going and going and going and going. And we don't lack consistency in what we've done, what we do. We've done it the same thing. Everyone knows it for 5 years now, and we're going to keep doing it.
Man, patient persistence. That is a really stellar mantra to tell yourself when you're going through a tough patch. That's really good. I forget who said it, but the saying, every day I want to go to bed tired and wake up hungry. That sounds like it. You're just, every day's fresh and new, and you gotta keep getting after it. And that's what grit is all about: patient persistence. And
I have
nobody's put it that way before, but that's really good.
Yeah, I have a quote that I know everyone loves their quotes, and you just gave one yourself. The quote that I love to use, it used to be on my signature line. That is from Nelson Mandela, and the quote is, "Everything is impossible until it gets done."
Right. That's right. Yeah, I love that one. That's great. Yeah, those are great. So you mentioned one thing about the lashback you get even from the hunting community that you're fighting for. That seems like a tough challenge. What I guess it's easy to imagine what the non-hunting community would say or what the problem is, but I'm having a hard time imagining what is it that the hunting community would have such a problem about, or does it go back to the politics that you mentioned?
No, well, the hunting community, number one, is a very passionate community. Okay. And passion breeds sort of ideologies about how things are meant to be done. And that just
stuck in their ways.
Not really just stuck in their ways, just like the way that they like to do things. And because I think inherently in hunting, going back all the way to, our DNA that are hunter-gatherers, there's inherently a competitiveness to hunting in that, you 300 or 400 years ago, you drug the deer back to the fire, you got the best cut of meat, plus you probably got the favor of most of the women in the tribe. And all the other guys in the tribe were looking at you and with a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of pang. And back then, they probably just went out the next day and grafted harder to get a better deer. But today, it's just a social media backlash on, oh, I don't like to hunt that way. Oh, I can't believe you hunt that way. Oh, I can't believe you said this. I can't believe you said that. And when we say this or that, it's more like based on their opinion, they think one way, and we just happen to look at both sides and present a different idea to the table, which didn't fit with their frame of reference. Number one. Number two.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
And keep going.
It just doesn't give, it doesn't meet with their frame of reference. And then two, people like to hunt differently. And you like to bow hunt, but you don't like long range rifle hunters. And instead of just saying, just like music tastes, I like heavy metal music, you like country music. I don't hate everyone that loves country music in the hunting community. Unfortunately, they don't just forget about it and just say like, well, I'll just let them do what they do. It's ethical. Well, it's legal. It's well regulated, and they're respecting what they do. There's a quite a hefty voice out there that says we don't believe that is a quote unquote ethical practice of hunting, and they then confuse ethics with personal preference, and that's where we land.
Yeah, well, and so an ethics kind of has gray area to it. I would think people could argue too. It's what's ethical to one person. I think everybody has overlap, but maybe there's gray area with where the limits of how ethical something is. I guess it could be on a scale, maybe.
Well, I think that people confuse ethics and preference. So ethics, and I don't know. I'm not smart enough to understand the philosophical ideologies of different ethics, but the ethics of hunting is always tied to the welfare of the animal. Are you being ethical in reducing the pain and suffering of that animal? That is the ethic. Okay, the action really has very little to do with the ethic. The action is very much more personal preference. So you may believe that because I'm a long-range rifle hunter and I shoot animals at 600 yards, that you somehow in your brain feel that that's unethical because there's a greater chance of me wounding and causing suffering on animals. Wherein I could be looking at you because you're a bow hunter, and I believe you are less ethical because I don't believe that archery hunting is as lethal of a mechanism to kill deer as a rifle.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, it's a preference scenario, not an ethic scenario that is framed in a reference of what you believe to be quote unquote ethical.
Yeah, and really the shot placement is more critical in either scenario, right? The rifle, a bullet theoretically is more deadly than an arrow, yes, but a bullet in a bad spot is going to have the same wounding and painful death scenario. And so the definition then of ethics maybe is first, and everyone needs to agree that a swift, least painful death as possible, that's the definition of ethics. And then it's personal responsibility to practice and ensure that your shot placement is on par and that you're the most lethal you can be with your preferred method.
100%.
But that requires personal responsibility, and a lot of the general population's not too terribly into that at times.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
And it requires practice too, right?
Right. Hours. Yeah. Repetitions. Exactly. How much of that do you think is the social media, keyboard warrior syndrome? People just lashing out or having, they think they have a voice and so they want to be heard.
Well, everyone has a voice today because of social media and the internet, which has its disadvantages, but it also has its advantages. All right. So people would ask me a lot, and maybe it's I'll change your question a little bit. Is social media good for hunting? In the regard of people putting really, really stupid stuff out there? No, it's not. But at the same time, people like us putting really, really good stuff out there about hunting, it's the only way, it's the first time ever in human history that we're able to reach so many people with our positive message. We just haven't done it yet, right? Because our industry hasn't changed its frame of reference to do that yet. We're still stuck 20 years ago, 30 years ago, just been doing what we used to do, take photographs of the animals with the hunter, share it with your friends, and receive the accolades. Well, now we're sharing it with our quote unquote online friends, which then share it with the world, that then people look at it and they don't understand because they're like, well, what is this? Is this just somebody glorifying killing an animal? Or is it more about, wow, look at the impact of what hunting has done for the population of that animal? We just haven't changed our frame of reference into that second part yet.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. So is there any type of hunting you've come across that is legal that you don't advocate, or that you have found that is unethical? Or is it just typically globally across the board, if it's legal, it's generally ethical, and therefore it needs to be fought for and stood up for?
That's a great question. Again, I don't want to confuse ethics and personal preference.
Right.
So to me, if a hunting practice is legal into blood origins, if a hunting practice is legal, we fight for it. It is part of who we are as hunters. I'll use an example that is not currently legal. If you could spear deer and it was legal, we would be for it. But we wouldn't be for someone posting a video spearing a deer and spearing it in its hindquarters and saying, look at what we just did. Okay. And you just mentioned it already. That happens with a bow, that happens with a gun. All of those things happen, right? What we're not for is idiots posting about it on social media and showing disrespect to the wildlife that we chase. That's not what we're for. So every legal hunting activity does have bad apples that disrespects the wildlife that they chase. Thankfully, every hunting activity, legal hunting practice, have far more advocates for the practice, for the respect, for the gratefulness, for what it does for them, for the food, for the freezer, all of those kinds of things, that are going to champion more of that to showcase that lifestyle versus that, bad apple. Unfortunately, the bad apple gets a lot of press and gets a lot of virality in the social media space that we live in. But we're working on trying to figure out how we can get a little bit more virality to the positive side of who we are as hunters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess that segues into the social media thing too, is would blood origins be what it is without social media? Or another example,
Oh,
the
no,
positive impact
absolutely
that,
not.
right, right. And the positive impact that someone like Cameron Haynes has had, as a huge example, on the hunting industry in general and the hunting community wouldn't be possible either.
No, there's no way that Blood Origins today survives starting in 1970. Because the only way you'd have to figure out, if it was back in those days, you'd have to figure out people that would be interested in presenting pro-hunting rhetoric, pro-hunting narrative, but in a newspaper format or in a radio segment format or in a magazine format, which wouldn't be impossible. You just adapt your strategy to the media, that network that you're going to engage in, for people to understand things. And so, as you know, we're sitting in 2023 today. I wonder what the landscape of media looks like in 2030.
Right.
And so we need to just continually adapt who we are and the content we create to the ever-changing media environment that swirls around us.
Yeah, and technology, it's constantly developing and adapting and growing and getting faster, different. I listened to Mark Zuckerberg talk about the whole 3D or 4D or whatever virtual reality technology that he's working on, and it's absolutely mind-boggling, some of the stuff that is out there that may or may not be coming. So I grew up in Florida. There's a lot of guys that run dogs here, chasing deer, and then I don't know, from my perspective, it seems like the backcountry bow hunting type of hunting has gained the most traction on social media, at least from my perspective. So you get a lot of guys that look at that and now look down on or argue with the guys that run dogs here. That's in my microcosm, just this Florida kind of rural central Florida market. That's what we see. That's the dichotomy here. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it more regionally or globally. I guess do you see that that kind of argument or disagreement being, is it a regional thing, or is it like because of social media it doesn't matter anymore where it is, or across continental, what is it universal, I guess, or is it more locally focused?
I think there's always been inherent disagreements between hunting practices everywhere. You just haven't been aware of it. Now with social media, it's very hyper focused and in your face that you see it all the time. And it spans every single geographic scale that you can imagine. From people in Central Florida that have various ways on how they hunt, dog hunters versus still hunters, to people in the West that choose to hunt private ground versus public ground, to people in Australia that, consider a deer invasive nuisance species versus a game resource species. It is pervasive no matter where you are in the world, no matter what scale you're going to live in or operate at. There's going to be factions in hunting based on species, based on type of equipment, based on method, based on land ownership, based on all 4 or 5 factors combined.
Ooh. Can you hear that coming through on the mic?
Yeah, what was that? Was that something landing on the roof of your caravan?
Kids or kids on bikes running into the side of the
nice.
camper. That I don't know.
They're your kids?
Loud. Sorry. Yeah, well, my kids, and we're camping with some friends in the spot next to us too. So they're running amok out there. Pretty typical. But sorry about that.
No, I
wasn't sure if the mic was picking it up or not.
Oh no problem.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated. I hunt personally. I think it's a fantastic tradition. I learned it from my dad, my uncles. We were a hunting family, hunting and fishing family community. I see great value in it. Sometimes the value in it is hard to articulate, but I guess you've been doing this long enough now that you've worked through that, right? And you've got your message really well defined. How do you approach someone? I'm fascinated in the hunting aspect. I'm trying to remember to tie it back into grit so I stay on topic. But how do you approach someone or deal with that conflict? Or, do you rehearse your message? What's your approach to when you know that you're coming up against an anti-hunter who's expressed, that they're adamant, and you're polarized? How do you deal with that polarization?
Yeah, it all depends, right? Some anti-hunters are willing to listen. Other anti-hunters aren't willing to listen at all. And so when someone's not willing to listen at all, especially if it's like in a social media debate, right? Because that's probably going to be the most common discussion point that you're going to have. I think you want to remember one thing first and foremost. For the person who's not willing to change, you're going to be interacting with that person not to change them, but for the hundreds, maybe thousands of people that are going to watch you and read your comments and your exchange with them. And that's a very good practice when tying to social media, that you always think about who is actually reading what you write, because you have no idea who you're touching. You have no idea who you're engaging with that actually read your stuff or just watch you. They don't interact with you, but they watch you. So showing respect, showing some gentlemanly conduct, being informative, not rising to the baits, that kind of stuff is going to yield incredible seeds and incredible efforts for hunting and hunters without you even knowing it. Okay.
Wow.
So that's number one I would do. Number two, if there's someone that's actually willing to listen, then you just start very, like what you ask a lot of questions. Like what is your problem with hunting? Oh, I just hate animals dying. Okay. Are you vegan or vegetarian? Number one. And if they say no, you say, well, when it comes, you're a meat eater, I'm a meat eater. I have chosen to hunt because I want to know everything about that piece of meat. I want to know where it came from. I want to know where it lived, how long it lived, because I know how old the animal is when I killed it. I know how it died because I killed it. I know where the meat, whose hands touched the meat. I know everything about that animal. But you go to, and then when I have that animal, I'm willing to share that meat with so many people. And when you, again, cost factor, sort of take a cost benefit, it's not really a cost benefit ratio, but the cost of a pound of venison in comparison to a ribeye at a store, it's like 5, 10, 20 times more costly at the end of the day. And we're willing to give that away for free. I don't know, I've never heard of someone going to a store buying a bunch of ribeyes and then calling up their friends saying, hey, I just bought ribeyes. You want some for free? Doesn't happen.
Right.
So there's the meat argument on, hey, you eat meat, but you're against hunting. Seems a bit hypocritical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, well, you guys are just raping and slaughtering animals left, right, and center. Well, I have data and science to show that that's not the case. Look at populations of animals in places around the world where hunting is a key management tool for wildlife conservation. Look at North America. We're sitting in its backyard. At the turn of the century, there was only 150,000 white-tailed deer. Today, we sit with 32 million white-tailed deer in America. Why? And you almost, that question, like, have you thought about why, is a really good in sort of engagement point, because then they're like, no, why is it? And it's like, well, because sportsmen realized that, before there was any legality or regulations to it, that people were just raping the landscape. And sportsmen just said, no, look, we need to figure something else out. And we need to put something in place to grow the population. And so we put regulations in place on us, on what we needed to harvest. Oh, but that's what you guys should have been doing for all the time. I said, I agree. But we also need to do something else. And so we decided to tax ourselves. And we tax ourselves through everything that we do. We buy ammunition, we buy clothing, we buy apparel. There's 11% tax that nobody realizes that. And then at some point in discussion, you can say, well, do you like to go camping? Where are you right now, Carson? You're in a campground of a wildlife management area, maybe in Central Florida. If you are, that wildlife management area operates because of hunters and shooters. Who do you think's paying for the camp staff? Who do you think's paying to keep that campsite up? It's money coming to the state because of hunters and shooters. Oh, wow, I had no idea. That happens all the time. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, I had no idea. And those are the kinds of arguments you've got to really just understand where they're coming from first before you can pivot into like, okay, here's my response.
Yeah. So is learn through trial and error over the last 5+ years, or did you have seek out any training to figure out the psychology behind approaching tough subjects?
No, I think it's trial and error. I have a PhD in restoration ecology, wildlife conservation biology. So I've got the acumen to understand like what all of the biology